I never imagined that my life would lead me to this moment. My name is Lena. I am 38 years old, and my husband, Victor, is a successful businessman. He is very busy with his work, spending his time either on long business trips or in meetings, glued to his phone and computer screens. I have always supported my husband's work, understanding the pressures he is under. But every time he leaves the house or works hard, I feel a strange sense of deprivation and loneliness. We have a son called Ethan, who is now 20 years old. Ethan does not like to be tied down and is always longing for freedom. After 2 years of college, Ethan decided to drop out to work. Even though my family is well off and can support him, he found a job at a grocery store near our house, where he works hard and usually comes home at noon to rest. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so I can bring you more fascinating true stories like this one. And don't forget to watch this video to the end, because this story is going to be incredibly interesting. This summer was particularly hot. The heat seemed to seep through every crack in the door and fill the house. One day, like any other, Victor left for work early in the morning, busy with his schedule. The house went quiet as he closed the door firmly, and I felt the silence, as I was the only one left in the vast room. Ethan was still working the morning shift at the shop and usually came home at lunchtime. The sun was high in the sky, radiating intense heat that made the whole yard tingle. I was sitting by the window, looking out with a sad gaze, when I heard the sound of footsteps signaling Ethan's return. The door opened and he walked in, sweat dripping down his forehead, his t-shirt clinging to his body. "Mum, it's so hot today," Ethan said, putting the bag of snacks on the kitchen table. I smiled, watching my eldest son grow up day by day, my heart filled with indescribable emotions. Ethan walked over to the fridge, took out a bottle of cold water and sat down on the old wooden chair. The room returned to its usual silence, with only the steady rotation of the ceiling fan and the pattering sound of water drops falling from the cold water bottle onto the floor. We sat in silence, each lost in our own thoughts in the sweltering summer heat. The heat became unbearable for me that afternoon, so I decided to take a shower to relieve the discomfort. As I approached the bathroom, I heard the sound of running water. I took a few more steps and noticed that the bathroom door was ajar, revealing a small gap through which a faint light shone. In front of me was Ethan, standing naked under the stream of water. Even though I was his mother, this scene made my heart flutter. My heart was pounding like it was going to jump out of my chest. Not knowing what to do, I stood there frozen. Ethan was still in the shower, completely unaware that I was standing there, witnessing this private moment. The hot sensation in my body wasn't just from the weather, but it seemed as if something incomprehensible was rising and filling my heart. I could not explain my thoughts at the time, only that the confusion and embarrassment made me want to leave quickly before being discovered. But as I took a step back, my foot accidentally kicked the nearby mop, causing it to fall to the floor with a loud crash. The sudden noise made me panic. My heart felt like it was about to give out, and I quickly ran back into the living room, hoping that Ethan wouldn't notice my presence. As I sat down in the chair, I could feel my heart still pounding, my breathing getting faster, and my whole body shaking, as if I had just escaped from a dangerous situation. The sound of the mop falling seemed to echo in my head, making me afraid that Ethan would remember or notice something unusual. But the house was quiet. There was no sound of footsteps coming from the bathroom. I tried to calm myself, but the turmoil inside me wouldn't go away. The image of Ethan naked was still clear and haunting in my mind. I don't know why, but that moment seemed to awaken something deep inside me that I had tried to ignore for so long. The mixture of shame and guilt left me both confused and worried. I got up and paced the living room, trying to push the image out of my mind, but it kept coming back, haunting me and making me uneasy. The sound of water in the bathroom stopped, and a few minutes later, Ethan came out. He was wrapped in a towel, drops of water glistening on his strong shoulders. I glanced at him, then turned away, deliberately avoiding Ethan's eyes. but I couldn't hide the confusion in my heart. Ethan looked at me for a moment, then smiled slightly. "Mum, did you hear something? I think something just fell." I tried to keep my voice as normal as possible, even though it was shaking slightly. Mum dropped the mop. It's okay." After saying that, I clearly felt the vibration in my words and quickly turned my face away to hide my fear and embarrassment. Ethan shrugged, then quietly walked back to his room, closing the door behind him. The house fell back into an oppressive silence, but my mind was not at peace. The feeling of heat in my body, combined with the summer heat and the haunting image of Ethan, made me feel stuck between reality and chaotic thoughts that should not exist. I sat down in the chair and put my head in my hands, trying to clear my mind of the images that kept popping into my head. "Lena, what are you doing?" I accused myself, my inner voice filled with fear and shame. Even though I tried to calm myself down, my eyes had never been the same towards Ethan since that day. I didn't understand why, and more importantly, I didn't know how to escape this whirlpool of confusing emotions. Time flew, and the next morning began with the same rhythm. Victor, as usual, sat down to breakfast in a hurry, his eyes glued to the screen of his phone, checking every email and message. I quietly set the table for breakfast, trying to keep my face calm despite the sadness that silently rose when he announced his upcoming long business trip, expected to last a whole week. Even though I was used to Victor's busy lifestyle, every time he announced his departure, my heart couldn't help but sink, a feeling of emptiness spreading inside me like a darkness. "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything at home after this business trip," Victor said in a hurried voice, forcing a smile before getting up and leaving the house. The sound of the door closing echoed, leaving the room in a vague silence. Ethan sat across from me, gently stirring the cup of coffee in front of him, his eyes tired and thoughtful. When Victor was gone, Ethan looked up, his eyes searching for sympathy. "Mum, I have a week off work. How about we go on a trip? It's been a long time since we've been away as a family." I smiled sadly and shook my head, a hint of regret flashing in my eyes. "Your father is very busy. He's on a business trip for a whole week this time." I couldn't help but notice that Ethan's eyes were slightly sad, his lips pursed as if he was trying to hold something back. He didn't say anything else, just nodded slightly and then got up to clear the dishes off the table. I could clearly feel Ethan's longing for a real family trip. No more moments associated with work and distance. After breakfast, it was just the two of us in the house. I wondered how long it had been since I had the chance to sit down and really listen to Ethan. His thoughts, his feelings, his dreams. Life had swept us both into busy cycles, not allowing us to stop and look deeply into each other's eyes. We sat in the living room, the cool breeze from outside blowing in through the half-open window, bringing in a bit of fresh air. Soft sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting warm streaks of light on the carpet beneath our feet. "Mum, I have a lot to tell you," Ethan said, his voice much deeper and more mature than before. "Whatever it is, just tell me." "I'm listening," I smiled, my eyes soft as I looked at him, encouraging him. He began to tell stories about everyday life, about working in the shop, about funny customers and unexpected situations that made him laugh. I listened intently, feeling as if I had found a part of the connection that had slowly faded over the years. Ethan's eyes flashed with joy as he recalled memorable moments, making my heart feel strangely warm. Time passed quickly, and I found myself truly immersed in the conversation, as if all the distance between us had disappeared. In that happy moment, I teased him, "You're so tall. Have you ever thought about having a girlfriend? Mum, I see lots of girls in the neighborhood staring at you every time you walk by." Ethan laughed out loud, his eyes sparkling with joy. "Mum, let's talk about this slowly. I want to focus on work first," he said, his tone both joking and sincere. We chatted on, reminiscing about warm old memories, the times when the whole family went on picnics when Ethan was little, or when he was naughty and Victor and I scolded him. Then the whole family burst out laughing. The air in the room filled with lively stories, as if time had turned back to those happy days. Time passed quickly, and the midday sun shone more brightly through the window, making the room brighter and warmer. I felt my heart lighten, as if the visible distance between Ethan and me had been filled with love and understanding. A moment of silence passed. The clock showed it was almost noon. Both mother and son gradually fell silent, each lost in their own private thoughts. But the atmosphere between us had changed, warmer, closer, and more peaceful than ever. Suddenly, Ethan looked me straight in the eye and asked a question that left me speechless, not knowing how to answer. "Mum, did you see me take a bath yesterday?" My heart pounded, and my face turned red as fire when I heard this question. My mouth was dry, unable to utter a word. Ethan looked at me intently, his eyes shining with curiosity mixed with patience, as if waiting for an answer, not giving me too much time to think. "Actually, I knew you were watching yesterday, but I just pretended not to know." Hearing this confession, my heart felt like someone was squeezing it, both embarrassed and worried. Chaotic thoughts swirled in my head. Ethan knew, so why did he keep quiet until now? I tried to open my mouth to speak, but every word seemed to get stuck in my throat. Our eyes met, and I felt something strange and indescribable pass between us. Just as I was about to speak, Ethan suddenly spoke up, breaking the awkward silence. "Mum, I like you." Ethan's voice was soft but firm. "I like you, not as a mother and son, but as a lover." Ethan's sudden confession left me stunned. All the emotions mixed in my heart, surprise, concern, and something hard to put a name to. My heart stopped for a moment. His eyes never left me. They contained not only seriousness, but also a vague hope. I was silent, not knowing how to face the truth that had just been revealed. My heart fluttered, and I found it hard to describe as Ethan's words lingered in my ears. "Mum, you asked me if I wanted a girlfriend, but in my heart all I wanted was you." I felt my chest tighten, my heart pounding. It was a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. I was surprised, confused, trying to find words in my chaotic thoughts, but was met with silence. Ethan sat close by, his eyes very concerned and tender, as if he could read my inner turmoil. My heart ached between self-reproachful questions. How could I feel like this when I had not been close to anyone for so long? Did I deserve to feel fragile and young again? "Are you serious?" I asked hastily, throwing the words out through trembling eyelashes. But Ethan did not answer. Instead, he took my hand, warm as the heart of spring. I felt the softness in Ethan's eyes, and all my thoughts suddenly vanished. Ethan pulled me into his embrace, his arms wrapped tightly around me as if to keep me from my worries. The sound of his heartbeat was like a coppery mist in his chest, and his breath warmed my ears. "I only want you." The whispered sentence still surrounded me like a silken mist. Ethan's lips were close. I felt my heart do a somersault in my chest. At that moment, I knew that no answer could express my feelings as clearly as Ethan's embrace. From the moment Ethan and I gave ourselves to each other for the first time, all boundaries seemed to disappear. We held nothing back and lost ourselves in each other's arms as if the outside world did not exist. From that day on, a secret was formed between us, a secret and dangerous relationship. Whenever Victor was away, the normally quiet house became a place of intense undercurrents. Ethan's gaze seemed to ignite all suspicion, and I could not resist the inexplicable attraction. The thrill of the door closing, the sound of every cautious footstep, and the hasty embrace felt as if we were afraid the world would see us. Deep down, we both knew that this relationship should not exist, that it could only lead to pain. Yet, against our better judgment, we rushed into each other's arms, like moths drawn to a forbidden light. In those secret moments, I did not think of the consequences or the recriminations. I only knew that for Ethan, the forbidden seemed more attractive than ever. But every secret has an expiration date, and deep down I knew that one day the truth would come out and take away everything we were holding on to. Ethan and I continued our lives in a tug-of-war between emotion and reason. Every time we faced each other, embarrassment and unseen desire would creep into our eyes. Our accidental touches, this inner conflict, tormented me every day. But I could not stop. We shared moments that we both knew should not exist, moments full of emotion, but also full of guilt. One afternoon, Victor unexpectedly came home earlier than expected. The sound of the car pulling up in the yard and the sound of the key in the door lock stunned me, a feeling of fear rising. Ethan and I barely managed to separate, both eyes confused and worried. Victor came in, his face tired but his eyes searching. He looked at me and Ethan a little suspiciously, but said nothing. The atmosphere in the room was tense, like a string about to break. I knew things couldn't go on like this. The tension between the three of us was suffocating. I had to face the fact that I had to end this wrong relationship before it became irreparable. One evening, I called Ethan out onto the veranda. The dim light fell on his face, his eyes filled with emotion. "We can't go on like this, Ethan," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I love you like a son, and that's the right thing to do. Anything else will only bring pain." Ethan fell silent, his eyes on the floor, sadness spreading across his face. Finally he nodded, his shoulders slumping as if a heavy burden had been lifted. Our relationship had ended quietly, but the pain remained in both our hearts. Victor still didn't know what had happened. I decided to spend more time with my family to repair what was broken in me and to rebuild trust. Ethan left home for a while to find balance and start a new life. I realized that sometimes loneliness and the desire for affection can make people do the wrong things. The biggest lesson I learned was honesty and the courage to face your feelings. To protect what is really important, you have to let go of what should not be kept. The end leaves a bit of regret and reflection, but also the beginning of healing and moving on. After all I have been through, I would like to share some reflections with those who may be facing similar challenges or emotions. What I have learned is to know myself and to face loneliness. There was a time when I felt trapped in loneliness and emptiness. Instead of looking for comfort in the wrong places, I realized that I needed to learn to face these feelings, ask myself why I was feeling this way, and work to address the root cause. Maintain boundaries and respect your self-worth. When dealing with difficult emotions, I realized that maintaining boundaries in relationships is extremely important. Respecting yourself and others helps prevent mistakes that you may regret later. Communication and connection is key. If you feel lonely in your relationship, initiate communication. Sometimes just having an honest conversation can help clear up misunderstandings and create connection. Forgive yourself and learn to grow. I have made mistakes, and the hardest part is facing the regrets. But I realize that beating yourself up only makes things worse. Learning to forgive yourself is the first step to healing and moving on. Treasure the relationships that really matter. Ultimately, I have learned that nothing is more precious than love and connection with people who truly care about you. Don't let fleeting emotions get in the way. When you feel confusion, disorientation, or conflict within yourself, take a moment to reflect. Look at yourself and choose the right path. I have learned that strength is not only about standing firm, but also about knowing when to stop.